So, places I've been to. Um, well, I guess we should start when I was little. When I was about 10 years old, 10 or 11, I think, I went to Disney World. I think it's Disney World, the one that's in Florida, to Orlando. So, I used to live in Texas. I was born there with my family, obviously. And we decided to drive to Orlando to go to Disney World. I do remember, however, that somewhere in one of the southern states, whether it be Mississippi, Alabama, or there, we had a rough time getting gasoline at this particular gas station that we stopped at in a little tiny town. It was probably my first real experience with racism. At the time, I didn't really get it. I didn't really understand why they were telling us to just keep going and not get gas there. It very didn't seem very logical. I mean, but whatever. In retrospect, it was my first real um, encounter with that sort of thing. So it was kind of a weird experience. In Texas, I've been to quite a few cities: San Antonio, Austin, Houston. Lived in Houston for a while. I went throughout Texas. We went to Orlando, and then we also would go to Mexico a lot, to a city called Matamoros, which is right across the border in southern Texas, where some of my family lived. So we would go across the border. Sometimes weekly, we'd go like on the weekends and just go visit and say hi and come back. During the summers, when we'd have summers off from school, I'd spend them in Monterrey, Mexico, which is towards the middle center area of Mexico. Then when I was 17, I graduated from high school and I moved to Detroit here. So I've been to Chicago quite a few times. St. Louis, in Ohio, a couple cities in Ohio, and Toronto, Canada, London, Canada, and Montreal recently. For a little while, I worked in the cruise industry. You know, the big, giant ships and midnight buffets and that kind of thing. Yeah, I worked in the cruise industry, so from time to time I would have to go on cruise ships and sail from port to port, or sometimes go to a port town and hang out there for a week. And as the ships come in, I would go onto the ship and work for a little while, and then come off. So I've spent a lot of time in port towns in the Caribbean. So I've been to like San Juan, Puerto Rico, Cozumel, Mexico, Belize, a bunch of the little tiny islands like Antigua and Half Moon Cay, and just a bunch of those little islands. Like there's probably a map on the screen right now of like the Caribbean islands. I've been to a lot of these little islands, and they're ridiculously difficult to get to, not by boat in some cases. I have flown into one or two of these little tiny islands, and the runways extend out into the ocean. So when you take off on an airplane from one of these little tiny islands, it looks like you're going to fall into the sea, and then all of a sudden you're in the air. And it's quite the reverse when you're landing. You're landing, it looks like you're going to fall into the ocean again, like, fall this way, and all of a sudden there's a runway underneath you. So that's kind of scary. Much later, I ended up going to Paris on vacation, and that was lots of fun. I really love Paris. I'd love to go back there again at some point. There are two trips that I've taken that are relatively significant. One was to Niagara Falls, and not for cheesy reasons. I went to Niagara Falls with my family. My dad had cancer at the time. He had liver cancer, and they had given us a timeline of about 2 years with my dad after he was diagnosed, and he had survived those 2 years, and he was actually doing quite well. He was actually in remission. So I invited them up here to Detroit because they lived in Texas still, and I took them to Niagara Falls because they had never been. It's not that far from here. It's like 4 or 5 hours by car. So we went there. We had a good time, and my dad really liked it. He loved going to see the falls, and we went to a couple places and had a really nice fancy dinner and that kind of sort of thing. So that was really cool, and it was really cool to hang out with, you know, my family. It's significant because it was the last time, like, our family kind of had a little vacation like that. My dad passed away about 2 years ago now, a little bit more than 2 years. And that was like the last kind of family little trip we took. The last trip I took, which was about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, was to Guatemala, where my mother was born, where my mom's side of the family comes from. They come from Guatemala. My dad's side came from Mexico. So we went to Guatemala, and it was a beautiful trip because we'd always talked about going to Guatemala. We've always talked about going back to see family because we had lots of family there, and we got to do that. It was really, really cool to go see and do that, and actually visit some of this family we never get to see, and go to these places where they grew up. And that was really, really awesome. I got to climb a volcano. That was pretty dope. And all sorts of beautiful things. We went to the rainforest, and we went to go see a bunch of Aztec ruins. That was really, really beautiful. Got to stand on top of one of these giant ruins where they filmed a little bit of Return of the Jedi. There's probably a picture here of that scene. It's all of like 30 seconds, you know, like on the moon of Endor kind of thing. But it's there. So that's where I've been. I'll see you next time.